Greetings, BookTube. This is my first of a video series dealing with John Berryman's Dreamsongs, which I am reading with a group of very interesting booktubers whose links I will put in the show notes below. Since this is the beginning, I'm only going to deal with not even the whole first book of the 77 Dreamsongs. I'm just going to deal with 1 and 14. So really, I don't know how many videos I might end up making about this. There's not as much information about the second set of Dreamsongs that he published after the first 77, so that might be shorter. And I also wanted to deal in this early video with his influences. However, I wasn't able so far to find get free links to the stuff I'd really like to know more about. So we're sort of putting a pin in that. So he was very much a scholar as well as a beautiful poet. It was felt that those two things were closer to him than in some other people who've done both, but whose, voices are very disparate. His teacher was Van Doren, poet Van Doren. When Berryman was writing on Shakespeare, which he sort of never really finished writing on Shakespeare, Van Doren was the one he went to for advice. Van Doren told him he didn't think he was ever going to finish his Shakespeare. If we were to find the influence of Shakespeare in Berryman, and it's said that there's not a lot of it, as opposed to some others you'll see in a minute, probably I would imagine that would come in the sonnets. She wrote about adulterous affair that he had. So he also wrote very much in the style of Yeats. In fact, so much so that Randall Jarrell criticized him for it. And to his credit, Berryman very much admitted, in fact, he said, I didn't want to just write like Yeats, I wanted to be Yeats. So that would be in his earliest publications, that influence. In his scholarly writing, his probably major work was about Stephen Crane. And again, I wasn't able to get contact to all these, to his literary criticism so far, so I can't tell you too much about it. I could tell you it was praised by Edmund Wilson, and it was a critical biography. So he dealt with the man's life, but also with, in a critical way with his work. Imagining more so with the poetry side of Crane than the prose, given Berryman's own bent for poetry. He did, speaking of bio, he did not like being lumped in with the confessional poets. Almost everything first thing you'll read about him, he was one of the confessional poets, Sylvia Plath, these people. It was, I believe, in a Paris Review. I think it was a Paris Review interview. The interviewer asked him about it. He said, "How do you feel when you hear that?" And he said, "Extremely perturbed, or very, very angry," something to that effect. So, how do you reply? With disdain, or something like that? He said. All right, so that's about it for the influences. Let's get into, one other thing I need to say, because we've got him reading a lot, especially of the 77 Dreamsongs on YouTube. And I've put together a playlist of his readings along with other people who've read them on camera for us, and you can check that out in my playlist down below. I'll leave it there for, at least a few months while I'm doing these series on the Dreamsongs. So the voice, yes, I don't like his voice. It is not. I need to be very clear on this. I do not mean his writing, not his written voice, which I love. It's the problem of his actual speaking voice. I get the impression that he made a sort of caricature of himself, but I think he also lived that caricature to some extent. I saw him in conversation with a couple other scholars, and they kept referring to being up till 4 in the morning. It just seemed like drunkenly talking about all kinds of poetry and whatnot. Um, his voice to me very much sounds like the old drunks in the Northeast of the United States. Even his movements. It personally puts me off it for personal reasons that I'm not able to love his voice. But I know tons of people do, so I thought I would just talk about that. But also with regards to the mask. So what he clearly says Dream Songs are about Henry. Or called Mr. Bones by his interlocutor, but it's a mask. He says very clearly Henry is not me. To misparaphrase Flaubert, Henry c'est pas lui. um, yeah, so the blackface, right? Wow, I'll have to deal with that in another video because that's a whole subject. But one of the parts of his mask is a blackface. Is it his identification with the downtrodden? I'm guessing that he wasn't trying to be offensive. I really don't think that would be the case. So was he trying to, it was somehow a little bit, I think, to allow for a bit of patois or a bit of vernacular in the speaking, in the songs, in the lyrics of the songs. Perhaps that ebonics, thing, probably wasn't a word at that time, I think was part of it. We're not really sure. His father killed himself and outside the boy's window when he was very young, messed him up, and you can read that all through the poetry. I'm sure I'll do a video on that at some point. But in this beginning stage, I don't want to get too much into the biography. There is a clef reading of the Dream Songs where who is who and doing what. But I just want to deal with the writing, the text itself, the writer's voice, the Henry, not the Berryman, and why we need that mask, right? So there's an imperative that happens in the poems from the get-go. So here we go. Dream Song 1. Huffy Henry hid the day. The space there. Unappeasable Henry sulked. I see his point. Trying to put things over. It was the thought that they thought they could do it made Henry wicked and away. But he should have come out and talked. You can hear that this is clearly beautiful poetry. It's, the rhyme meter is all over the place. It does have the 3 stanzas, 6 lines each, so 18 lines per song. Wicked and away, you got, that beautiful cadence there. But what I thought was really interesting is the conditionals. So they thought that they could do it to him. We'll come back to they, but he should have come out and talked. There's a feeling that although this, I think a lot of people easily read this poetry as sing-song, as very, very almost beatnik spoken word, free flow poetry. But there is an imperative in here. There is something telling Huffy, trying to influence Huffy, what he should do, whoever they are. Next set of lines. Oh, and actually, let me jump right away into the beginning of 14 so you can see what I'm talking about. Life, friends, is boring. We must not say so. After all, the sky flashes, the great sea yearns. We ourselves flash and yearn. And moreover, my mother told me as a boy repeatedly, ever to confess you're bored means you have no inner resources. I conclude now I have no inner resources because I am heavy bored. People bore me, etc., etc. Anyway, what I wanted to highlight here in the beginning of it is we must not say so. So again, we've got that imperative, that must. In this case, we know at least the mother's at least part of it. Second stanza, Dream Song 1. All the world like a woolen lover once did seem on Henry's side. Then came a departure. Thereafter nothing fell out as it might or ought. I don't see how Henry, pried open for all the world to see, survived. There's something really interesting with the verbs in these songs. where you expect them, where they actually occur, there's different tenses that they are in, passive voice, gerunds. This is just all over the place with the verbs. It's really interesting. People don't read the verbs carefully enough in poetry, I've noticed. All right, so the woolen lover. What's the woolen lover? Well, could be the lamb, right? Jesus. So I don't know. Is Henry? Is he blackface? Is he maybe black? Is he among the downtrodden, the flock? Um, is he exalted with the disciples? Um, then came a departure. Nothing fell out as it might or ought. So this seems pretty much to be, hearkening back to Yeats here, right? The center would not hold. Nothing fell out as it might or ought. I don't see how Henry, pride open for all the world to see, survived. It was got like an oyster here. I'm going back to the, oh no, I'm going forward to the strong C mentioned in the third stanza here, which is at the top of 14. So third stanza, Dream Song 1. What he has now to say is a long wonder the world can bear and be. Once in a sycamore I was glad, all at the top and I sang. Hard on the land wears the strong sea, and empty grows every bed. So you got sea bed. Again, you got an emptiness, you got a nothingness, nothing falling out right. Here you got an emptiness. The strong sea. What is this strong sea? It's big. It's oceanic, right? It's the intro pretty much to our next poem, poem 14. Why did I pick 14? It seems to be one of the most popular and most quoted ones. So I think it's because of the opening. Life, friends, is boring. We must not say so. After all the sky flashes, the great sea yearns. So there we have it. We have the great sea again. Then we ourselves flash and yearn. So the sea is yearning, we are yearning. So we're identifying with the sea, or are we being carried with the sea or subsumed in the sea? And moreover, my mother told me as a boy. So here we have mother, mère in French. Mère is sea, mère is mother. Ever to confess you're bored means you have no inner resources. Those are capitalized in a way that I can't get away from human resources every time I see it. There's interesting uses of capitalization and where the line breaks occur in these songs as well. I conclude now, because after all, they're songs, right? So as I say them to you, you won't be able to see some of the weird breaks in there, like that big empty space in the first line of 1. I conclude I've no inner resources, I'm heavy bored. By the way, there's a fun BookTube account called Heavy Bored, or a book account, I don't know if it's BookTube. People bore me, literature bores me, especially great literature. Henry bores me. Is Henry speaking? Is Henry speaking of himself in the third person? Seems like we don't have anyone else so far, but we're about to meet Achilles with his plights and gripes as bad as Achilles. Achilles, I'll remind you, was in the Trojan War. He was the hero who could slay everybody if he was in the mood to do it, which he often wasn't because, somebody didn't, give him his due or, praise him high enough to the sky. He was that kind of guy, the prima donna on the team. But they killed his buddy lover. He got real mad, jumped back in, and that's that. So Achilles, the hero, held by his heel, right, when he got dipped in the immunity thing. That's all the stuff you need to know about Achilles. I can't get at his specific use of Achilles here. It might be the first allusion, a literary allusion that we have, which is where I really am bummed that I couldn't get at any of, since he is a scholar, get at any of BERRYMAN's actual literary scholarship, which might give me a better idea of the way he, for instance, likes to use Greek allusions, literary allusions. All right, last stanza here, so 14 and the end of our discussion today. Who loves people and valiant art, which bores me. So people bore him, just people in general. Are they the ones, back to the day, who thought that they could do it? But they couldn't, right? Nothing fell out. Nothing fell out. Henry bores me his plights and gripes about his Achilles. People, art bore me, tranquil hills, and gin look like a drag, and somehow a dog has taken itself and its tail considerably away into mountains or sea or sky, leaving behind me wag. Okay, so I'm going to leave that ending there. I don't know what quite just yet to make of the dog yet. I'm just getting into these songs, reading them all for the first time. I had not read them before. So I don't feel really ready uh, to form a supposition about what the dog, how it might be operating for us here, if indeed it's even a dog. I'll just draw attention to, again, at the very end, we have the sea, right? Into mountains or sea or sky, leaving behind me wags. We got three of the elements there. No fire. We got the sea in the beginning and the end of song 14. Also appears in song 1. Seems like a pretty important leitmotif for our friend John Berryman. That's everything I wanted to talk to you about so far. Just getting started in our exploration of the Dream Songs by John Berryman. I really highly encourage you to jump in on the group. More the merrier. Sure, we'll all get totally different readings out of these very personal, but very universal, and somewhat tortured, and therefore fun to dissect dream songs. And never forget that they are songs and dreams. Dreams where dogs wander in and out, and they don't have to have a reason. They could just pop up in the middle of your test that you're taking in high school and you're naked and your teeth are falling out. That sort of stuff. Okay, but as I said, it's not all just free-flowing, form in these dream songs. There is an imperative. There is a, we must not say so. What can we say? What must we not say, right? So keep that in mind as well. Ta-da.